Hi, I'm Bibhusa, and the topic for the presentation today is should the voting age be lowered to 16 or not? So the contents for this presentation is going to be a brief introduction about the topic, moral conflicts, moral values in conflict, voting in Australia, cultural dimension, ethical theories supporting voting age to be lowered, and ethical theories against voting age to be lowered to 16. Conclusion, and then references at the end. So, what is a voting age? It is the minimum age declared by law that a person must attain before being eligible to vote in an election. The age that is set for voting is 18 years in most countries, but can be as low as 16 and as high as 25 years as well. So, what are the moral issues that come up with this topic? When debating about allowing a 16-year-old to vote or not, the things to be considered are the autonomy, the dependency on parents and adults, the maturity, liberty, and even human rights violation. The moral values in conflict are with voting at 16, people can argue that young people have adult responsibilities but are denied the same rights as adults. So 16-year-olds can take their driver's test, they can even enlist in army, but they're not allowed to have a say that can make a law for a country. And some 16-year-olds are knowledgeable about civics and politics even more than many adults, and have ability to make good voting choices. People who are against voting at 16 can debate that the widely observed decline in participation of young people in election and voting could be one of the reasons why young people should not be allowed to vote at 16. And also the immaturity and influence of adults like their parents and teachers that can have drastic effect in the governance structure. So voting in Australia. In 1800s, after Australia's first political party was established, men over 21 years of age, only men, were allowed to vote, but that didn't even include Aboriginal males. In early 1900s, women were finally allowed to vote when they got to the age of 21 years. In 1973, voting age was lowered from 21 to 18. And in the present context, voting age in Australia still remains 18, with debate whether to be lowered to 16 years or not. The voting system, it remains compulsory for everyone in Australia who are over 18 years of age. This data comes from Education Services Australia 2020. So the voting in most countries still remains 18, but some countries like Argentina, Austria, Brazil, Cuba, and a lot of other European countries like Scotland, Ireland, they have taken their voting age down to 16, but it can differ from country to country, ranging from 16 to even 25 years, which is still present in the UAE. When voting was lowered to 18 in 1973 in Australia, it was done on the basis that recent wars had seriously injured or killed 18 to 21-year-olds. Asking an individual to give their life for the country but not allowing them to vote was the main reason to lower voting age. In 2012, the first argument started in Australia about lowering it to 16 on the basis that it would be increase in political participation, political maturity, and equity. But the bill to lower voting age to 16 recently got declined by the parliament last year in 2019. When we talk about cultural dimension, we're comparing Australia to Europe. So the youth or the young adults who are living with their parents in Australia are more than 50%, but in Europe it's only 28%. This questions Australian culture and its youth's immaturity and dependency on their parents, which could be the reason why most European countries support 16-year-olds taking part in election, whereas in Australia, the bill could not get passed. So the ethical importance would be when people vote, the government becomes better or worse. If bad decisions are made, we can get a racist, sexist, or even homophobic laws. Um, and if a 21-year-old age group is asked about the political matters in Australia, how many of you can answer the questions correctly and efficiently? So when talking about the ethical theories that support the voting age to be lower to 16, one of them is utilitarianism. So what it says is it is based on rightness of an act of an individual to bring greater outcomes. It also includes following a rule, even though utility of breaking a rule could be greater than keeping it. It has the ability to recognize a person's right and obligation as it has commitment to an overall moral strategy. So if voting age to be lowered to 16, rights and duties of young people are established, giving them an autonomic feeling. That's why rule utilitarians support voting age to be lowered to 16 years of age. The second one is Kantianism. Kantianism, it believes that an action conducted with goodwill is the right action, and Kant's theory concentrates on fulfilling one's duty rather than the consequences of the action. It comes from BBC 2014. As long as a 16-year-old individual votes and fulfills his or her duty, the consequences of the action would not matter. For example, even though a government which encourages racist, homophobic, and sexist laws wins an election because of majority of votes from young people, conscience would still be okay with it, with them taking part in elections, as outcomes of these actions do not matter as long as they vote. So for the third one is libertarianism. It strongly believes in individual freedom. It is also about free speech, individualism, and individual rights, leading to autonomy of an individual. So libertarians would support 16-year-olds voting as they think that the dignity of an individual is important, which entails responsibilities and rights. When talking about the ethical theories that are against voting at 16 years of age, the first one is act utilitarianism. It focuses on particular situations and acts, which determines if the act is right so that you can get the best possible outcomes. It promotes any kind of act if it has greater good for maximum number of people. Parliament of Australia 2020 found that the poll conducted in 2010 Australian election study opposed to change in voting age, with 72% against any change. Only 28% of these voters would be pleased if voting age was to be lowered, which is against an act utilitarian's belief. So they would be against young people of the age of 16 to be taking part in any voting. The second one is moral relativism. It believes in no universal moral principles. It can be understood as cultural, meta-ethical, or normative moral relativism. It believes that moral standards can be defined by an individual's culture. So values can be universally true, but they can appear different across various different cultures. In Australia, young individuals living with their parents has increased to 17% in 2016 than when compared to 1981. Back then, it was just 10% living with their parents. It comes from Australian Institute of Family Studies, 2019. This proves that Australian young individuals are culturally dependent on their parents and adults and are not mature enough to be able to vote. The third one is ethical egoism. So what this theory is based on is pursuit of self-interest. Individual ethical egoism is looking out for one's own interest. Universal ethical egoism is people need to be concerned about benefits of others only if it contributes to self-benefit and self-interest. Only 28% of people support lowering voting age in Australia, so it is possible that the remaining people did not see any self-benefit and interest, even though 16 and 17-year-olds may have political interests and their own benefits. So when it comes to conclusion, the ethical theories that believe that voting age should be lowered to 16 are rule utilitarian, Kantianism, and libertarianism. So, because they recognize a person's rights and obligations, making them feel autonomic, because they concentrate on fulfilling one's duty, and because they believe in individual freedom of speech and choice. But the ones that are against voting at 16 are act utilitarianism, moral relativism, and ethical egoism, as they focus on acts which have greater good for more number of people, because they believe that different cultures have different values, and because they are pursuit of self-interest. I personally believe that 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote, as it would allow them to have a say in law, which will affect their future, increasing voter turnout, and young people who are actually interested and knowledgeable in politics should be given an opportunity. But I also believe that if they're allowed to vote, it should not be made compulsory, so that people who are not interested, they don't have the compulsion to go in and vote. If you want to share your views, then you can put it in the comment section below. That will be all for today, and this is just a reference list.